What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Too Good for Theaters video. Today we're going over another NFL draft prospect here, that being the wide receiver out of Ole Miss, Trey Harris III, and personally my favorite wide receiver in this draft class. So let's get right into it. So starting off here with Trey Harris, he is 23 years old. He is 6'3" in height, 210 pounds. I believe he played 5 seasons of college football, 3 at Louisiana Tech and 2 at Ole Miss, where he played alongside who's projected to probably be the 3rd overall quarterback in this draft, being Jackson Dart. But what I like about Trey Harris a lot is his deep ball kind of tracking, as well as his deep ball metrics. And he is a very solid and productive deep ball target, as well as that kind of allows for him to be someone who was very successful in the underneath routes as well, and someone who really thrived in the yards after the catch, just being a physical outside boundary wide receiver. And what I mean by that is all the threat of the deep ball possessions that he can allure under Jackson Dart really set up his short area game, and it allowed him to hit on a ton of quick slants, a ton of quick hitches, some quick digs, where he really did have a lot of his production in the underneath game. And he showed a lot of times where he was able to miss some tackles and really break some tackles, as well as just pick up a ton of yardage in the yards after the catch program, but still have the ability to beat defenses over the top. And that's something that I really liked with Trey Harris, is that balance between his deep ball metrics as well as his underneath metrics. And overall, just being a pretty solid, productive wide receiver at one of the better programs in the college football rankings here, of course, being at Ole Miss. And some of his weaknesses are a little bit worrisome. However, he has had some injuries over these past couple seasons at the college ranks. He only played in 8 games this past season, of course, missing a couple there. However, he did return towards the back end of the season, so that was a promising sign. Whereas if it was a more so serious injury, I believe he would not have returned in that area as well. And I will say that he does have a little bit of a high drop rate, and I consider that more so kind of being on focused issues in terms of just not really paying attention fully, where you really do have to focus in, and that's something that's not going to be tolerated, especially with the Patriots. And take a look at what happened with Jalen Polk last year. There is a little bit of a risk in drafting someone who has a higher drop percentage. Of course, Jalen Polk at the time did not. So really it is going to fluctuate from athlete to athlete here. But hopefully that's something that once Trey Harris is drafted, he's going to have to focus on getting that drop rate at a lower percentage. But like I said before, I think that all the positives outweigh the weaknesses in Trey Harris's game, especially if he proves to be healthy. And I will say, out of this wide receiver class, he's maybe not one of the top tier athletes. However, he is certainly above average in terms of that category. But just between his production and his play style, he reminds me a lot of guys like Allen Robinson, where he really has proper body control and is able to use his height and his strength to really box out opponents and kind of use some of his power and his strength to win on routes, whether it's going over the top or even in the underneath routes. Maybe a little bit of push off at times, but I don't expect that to be much of an issue, especially against some of the more physical corners in this league. I don't think that he's going to get called for a ton of offensive pass interferences. And really, if he is able to hit his potential, he can be a guy like Michael Thomas, where he is really a reception machine just because of his threat of the deep ball. And if he does improve on becoming a better route runner underneath, I mean, a lot of his production was underneath routes just because of his threat of his deep ball percentages. So if he is able to kind of master those kind of quick yardage routes, those hitches, those quick slants that Michael Thomas really became accustomed to running with Drew Brees down there, that's certainly something that Trey Harris could certainly strive to be like. And that would be a perfect fit for this Patriots offense, having a guy like a Michael Thomas if in this offense, where you could play him on the outside, but just all the in-breaking routes, and especially with Drake Maye throwing across the middle, something that he certainly likes to do. I really do see Trey Harris as one of the perfect fits here for this Patriots offense. Taking a look here at Trey Harris's college statistics in the 2024 campaign, he only played 8 games, but he had an offensive grade of 89.7, a receiving grade of 89.4, and a run block rate of 76.1. And of course, all these grades are provided by PFF. He was targeted 76 times. He came down with 60 receptions for a reception rate of 78.9%. He came up with 1,030 yards on the year, averaged around 17.2 yards per reception, 7 touchdowns. He He was 8 of 13 in contested catch scenarios with a 61.5% contested catch rate. He had 5 drops on the year for around a drop percentage of 7.7%. I kind of alluded to that in the earlier parts of this video, so he does have to improve upon his drop rate. He actually averaged around 7.7 yards after the catch per reception, so very good in the yak yardage scenario there. He averaged around 5.12 yards per route run, and he had an average depth of target very similar to Jaden Higgins, that being 12 yards. Some of his key games were against Kentucky, where he was targeted 15 times, came down with 11 receptions for 176 yards, and you can throw a touchdown on that as well. However, he did fumble in that game, and I believe he was actually going up against cornerback Maxwell Harrison off of Kentucky, so that's a pretty big name there. So I would say that he played very well against Kentucky, and he also had himself another very productive game against LSU, where he was targeted 10 times, came down with 7 receptions for 102 yards. Could also throw a tutty on top of that as well. But taking a look by his snaps by alignment, he was strictly that X receiver for Ole Miss here. He took 326 snaps out wide compared to only 39 slot snaps. And like I said before with my Jaden Higgins video, he's not as versatile. And Jaden Higgins is certainly the better athlete of the two, and it's more versatile where you can kind of move him inside. But Trey Harris is probably a better just straight up vertical threat down the field. And that's very something that you would like to see Drake Maye kind of expand upon. He did that a ton in college, and really the Patriots didn't have the prototype personnel to do it last year. But if you bring in a guy like Trey Harris, that's certainly someone who's going to expand the field for your quarterbacks. And Trey Harris showed the ability to work on the inside as well, and that's something that Drake Maye certainly loves. So I really do see Trey Harris kind of being this perfect fit here for New England. I see him more so falling in the second round to third rounds, maybe not as high as Jaden Higgins compared to Trey Harris, but I do think that he's going to be a very highly touted wide receiver in this draft class, and I would love for the Patriots to kind of target him rather early and maybe even reach on him just a little bit if they are able to kind of secure his draft position here in New England. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap up my video here about Trey Harris. Like I said before, he's probably my favorite receiver prospect in this year's draft. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on whether or not you'd like to see Trey Harris land in New England, and hopefully I'll catch you all in the next one.